The galaxy had learned a new rule. Humans could not be controlled, tamed, or predicted. But the humans themselves had not yet learned the full extent of their power. After the encounters with gods, autarchs, and the stillness, human leadership gathered in orbit around Earth's first interstellar hub, the station Haven. It was a sprawling, chaotic network of construction pods, research modules, and civilian habitation, messy, unplanned, perfectly human. Admiral Kovac addressed the assembly. Scientists, military officers, philosophers, and diplomats alike listened, some arguing, some quietly observing. "We have survived," she said, voice steady despite the exhaustion visible in every line of her face. "We have survived gods. We have survived entities that erase motivation, coherence, and certainty. And we have done it without unity, without harmony, and without psionic advantage." A young officer raised his hand. "Then what now? Do we continue to act as god-breakers? Do we map the stillness, or do we impose ourselves on the galaxy?" Kovac interrupted gently. "No, that is not our role. We are not conquerors. We are architects of noise." The room fell silent. Scientists whispered to one another. Philosophers frowned. Even diplomats were unsettled. "Architects of noise," one muttered. "Yes," Kovac replied. "We do not lead by force. We do not unify by psionics. We exist within the system as a disruption, a refusal, a variable no one else can predict. That is our strength. That is our responsibility." A murmur ran through the assembly. Some nodded, some frowned. Humans had always been uncomfortable with responsibility without control. "Think of it this way," Kovac continued, pacing before the holographic star map of human influence. "The galaxy relies on order, psionic hierarchies, obedience, worship. We are the exception. Where we go, the impossible happens. Chaos spreads, not destructively, but freely. Systems reconfigure themselves. Species evolve unpredictably. Entire civilizations awaken to choice." A philosopher stood hesitant. "Are we gods, then?" "No," Kovac said sharply. "We are not gods. We cannot give meaning. We cannot enforce behavior. All we can do is exist. And in existing, we remind everything else that certainty is not eternal. That independence is dangerous and beautiful." Across the room, an engineer whispered, half to herself, "We are the ungovernable variable." "Yes," Kovac agreed, smiling faintly. "Exactly that. We are the storm the universe cannot predict, the echo that persists no matter how much silence tries to claim it. We are human. That is all, and that is enough." Outside the station, fleets drifted, observing distant systems. The stillness lingered, slowly approaching, testing, learning. But even it paused when it detected humans moving in deliberate, contradictory ways. The entity understood, at least partially, that its influence had limits, that its appetite could be denied, that some things, in all their noise and imperfection, could not be assimilated. In human ships, crews debated endlessly. One officer argued about tactics. Another recited a poem. A scientist played a simple melody across the intercom. A child born aboard a civilian module laughed at the sound. The cacophony, so familiar, so human, spread across the fleet. And the galaxy listened. Not because it was ordered to, not because it understood, but because it could not ignore the presence of something it could not dominate. Thalion, observing from afar, recorded the human assembly in silence. He felt an unfamiliar emotion, not fear, not awe, not anger, but respect. "They do not seek power," he whispered to Saleth. "They merely exist, and in doing so they shape everything else. They are the first species that the galaxy cannot fully control and perhaps never will." Saleth twitched slowly. "And yet they will stumble, they will fail, they will question themselves endlessly." "Exactly," Thalion said, eyes fixed on the star map. "That is their gift and their curse. That is why the universe has no answer for them. That is why humanity is unstoppable." Below them, Earth rotated, blue and chaotic. The human race stared into the void, unaware of the magnitude of its place in the galaxy. They had broken gods. They had survived the stillness. They had reshaped entire civilizations by existing. And now the galaxy was theirs to influence, not by domination, not by fear, but by presence. Because humans were the architects of noise, and the universe would never be silent again. The galaxy had learned to fear certainty, and humans were its living contradiction. Even now, decades after the first encounters with the autarchs and the stillness, the human presence in the void continued to ripple outward. Entire regions formerly dominated by the consensus had changed irreversibly. Minor species began experimenting with independent thought, even at the cost of inefficiency, chaos, and conflict. Some floundered, some flourished. Human fleets acted without coordination, improvising in ways no psionic species could anticipate. Civilian and military vessels were intermingled, arguments and jokes spilling across bridges like fire across dry grass. Sensors could not map intent. Communication protocols were inconsistent. Orders were contradictory. Yet action emerged, unpredictable, relentless, and effective. Captain Lyra Vance stood on the bridge of the Intrepid, watching a fleet of human ships navigate a recently destabilized system. "Observe the pattern," she told her officers, pointing to the chaotic swarm. "There is no leader, there is no doctrine, there is only us. Acting differently, thinking differently, resisting expectation. That is our advantage." A communications officer frowned. "But if we can't control our own forces, Captain, how do we coordinate with alien allies?" "We don't," Vance said. "We influence them, we inspire them, and if they can't adapt, they fail. That is the nature of our existence. We are not the galaxy's governors. We are the variable it cannot predict." Far beyond human space, the stillness stirred again. Its approach had slowed, wary of human fleets, cautious after previous encounters. The entity's influence extended into psionic space, probing, searching for patterns. But each time it touched humans, it recoiled, frustrated by the contradictions it could not resolve. In one critical system, human engineers tested a daring experiment. They deployed autonomous sensors to map the stillness's fringe, each sensor operating with contradictory directives, some programmed to record, some to analyze, some to argue with one another. The resulting interference created a localized disruption in the stillness, a pocket of unpredictability where its influence could not reach. "Do you see that?" whispered a young scientist, eyes wide. "We're bending it, not with force, not with weapons, just by thinking differently." Vance nodded. "Exactly, that is our method, noise as armor, chaos as shield, unpredictability as weapon." Across the galaxy, minor species began emulating human methods, tentatively at first. Some organized intentionally contradictory fleets. Others allowed civil debates to shape policy. Slowly, unpredictability became contagious. Entire civilizations relearned how to fail, adapt, and survive without reliance on a unifying chorus. Back in orbit of Earth, the Council of Human Command convened. Philosophers, engineers, soldiers, and civilians argued endlessly, as was customary. But each argument, each disagreement was purposeful. Humans realized their greatest power lay not in agreement, but in persistent, resilient contradiction. Thalion observed the unfolding events silently from his distant archive station. Even now, he could not fully anticipate humanity's actions. They did not act like any species he had studied. They were not unified, not predictable, not hierarchical. They were alive. "They are not conquerors," Saleth said beside him. "They are forces of change." Thalion nodded. "And that makes them unstoppable, not because they are stronger, but because the universe has no answer for them." On board human ships, arguments turned into improvisation, improvisation into discovery, and discovery into action. Small contingents acting independently began mapping regions previously thought impossible to explore. Others delivered supplies to destabilized planets, not to lead, but to enable. Each human mind contributed uniquely, creating a collective effect that no psionic system or entity could anticipate. And somewhere at the edge of known space, the stillness hesitated again, sensing the growing network of human thought. It was vast, it was contradictory, it was alive in ways the entity could not understand. For the first time, a force that had consumed entire civilizations paused, uncertain of how to proceed. Humanity had not sought this role. They had not planned to become the fulcrum of galactic chaos. Yet existence itself had thrust the responsibility upon them. And they would act as humans always did, unpredictably, imperfectly, unyieldingly. In the darkness between stars, a question began to crystallize. Not whether humans would survive, not whether they could fight gods or resist entropy, but what they would do next. Because in every corner of the galaxy, wherever life had once conformed, wherever thought had been constrained, the echo of humanity had begun to resonate. And that echo would not be silenced. The galaxy held its breath, not because humans threatened it, nor because they sought dominion, but because the universe had discovered a new constant, unpredictability embodied. Where once order, psionics, and divine authority shaped events, now existence itself responded to a species that refused cohesion. Across the edge of human space, the stillness recoiled, waiting, testing. Its approach was slow, deliberate, but hesitant. Every human action, every argument, every joke, every trivial complaint pushed it back, undermining its capacity to consume motivation or enforce passivity. Humanity's noise had become armor. On board the Intrepid, Captain Lyra Vance watched the fleet navigate a region freshly destabilized by a collapsing autarch. The human ships drifted with purposeful confusion. Engineers argued over propulsion priorities. Pilots shouted contradictory orders. Scientists debated methods of observation. Civilians wandered the corridors, laughing, singing, complaining, reading, dreaming. Every action conflicted with every other. Every mind contributed in ways no algorithm, no psionic, no entity could predict. "This is our strength," Vance said quietly to her executive officer. "We don't need unity, we don't need agreement, we only need to exist, and the universe will respond." The officer nodded. "The stillness doesn't know what to do with us, it can't finish us." "Exactly," Vance said. "It's learning the hard way that some things are not meant to be controlled." In distant systems, alien species began observing the humans more closely. Some were horrified. Some were inspired. Entire civilizations experimented with unpredictability, seeking to emulate the humans' chaotic resilience. Fleets adopted decentralized command. Governments tolerated dissent. Scholars encouraged debate rather than harmony. Societies, once rigid with psionic oversight, began to pulse with the unpredictable rhythms of choice. Thalian, still observing from his archive station, recorded the developments. He felt awe and unease. The humans were not leaders, not rulers, not gods. They were variables, and their reach was already extending into every corner of the galaxy that had once relied on certainty. "They are architects of chaos," he murmured to Saleth, "not by intention but by existence." "They are unstoppable," Saleth replied, antennae quivering slightly. "Not through power but through incomprehensibility." Back on Earth, the Council of Human Command convened. They debated endlessly, as humans always did. Every argument produced friction, and every friction generated new solutions, unexpected, inefficient, brilliant. Inconsistencies became strategy. Contradictions became insight. Confusion became clarity. A young philosopher asked, "Are we gods?" Kavach, standing quietly beside a star map of human influence, shook her head. "No, gods require obedience. We require nothing. We simply exist. And in existing, we shape everything else. That is our power. That is our responsibility. That is the gift and the burden of being human. As humans moved through the void, the galaxy itself began to change. Systems previously governed by rigid psionic orders fractured and evolved. Formerly static civilizations learned adaptability. Entire species began to rediscover curiosity, invention, and defiance. Where humans went, certainty faltered. Where humans acted, life became unpredictable. And somewhere at the edge of mapped space, the stillness waited, patient, vast, indifferent. Yet it hesitated now, aware that even an entity of infinite patience could not consume what could not be consumed. It could not predict humans, could not dominate them, could not even fully understand them. The humans did not know this. They did not plan for it. They did not see themselves as heroes, nor as saviors, nor as gods. They acted according to instinct, stubbornness, curiosity, humor, and the messy contradictions that had defined their species for millennia. And that was enough. Thalion recorded the final entry in his archive. They have broken gods, they have resisted the stillness, they have reshaped civilizations without ever seeking to control them. Humanity is not a conqueror. Humanity is a question, and some questions cannot be answered, only observed. The universe will never be the same. Humanity continued into the void, endlessly arguing, endlessly improvising, endlessly existing. Their noise spread outward like a pulse, reaching every corner of the galaxy that had once relied on certainty. And in that infinite, unpredictable ripple, the echo of humanity was eternal. The galaxy would never be silent again.